Hey everyone, Jason here. Today I am excited to show you my latest Lego model, which is this Kinetic sculpture of a cross-country skier, skiing in the classic style. I had this idea last winter when Crystal and I were actually out cross-country skiing one day, and as I was going through the motions, which are of course very repetitive, it occurred to me that it could make for a pretty interesting Lego model, and this is the result, which I am pretty happy with. The range of some of the movement is a bit short when you compare it to the real thing. For example, the tips of the ski poles do flick up a lot higher when you're actually doing the real activity. But it's pretty difficult to get large ranges of motion into a model of this size, and I wanted to keep the base reasonably compact on this one. So what is going on here? There are 4 control points which drive all of the motion. One for each ski, which are at the front here, just under the top of the base. And one for each ski pole, which are at the end of these transparent bars on either side. So to start with, let's take a look at the drive system. We have this pretty crazy crankshaft running through the whole model, and it drives all of the motion. For the ski poles, each one is driven by what's called a Chebyshev's lambda mechanism, which is the same mechanism I used to drive the feet of my Sisyphus model. And the cool thing about this mechanism is that the end of this bar will travel in an approximate straight line as it moves from the front to the back, where it will lift up as it returns to the front, which is exactly what your ski poles do relative to your body while you were cross-country skiing. And if we take a look back at the main model, we can see that I have connected the end of that mechanism to the middle of the ski pole, which I did mostly because had I attached it to the tip of the ski pole, the top of the base would have had to be all the way up here, almost twice as high, and I really wanted to keep the base as short as I could for this model. Now onto the skis. In the center of this crankshaft, you can see that we have 2 pistons which are connected to these levers in the back. And I did this to magnify the range of motion of the pistons. On their own, each piston only moves back and forth 2 studs. And by connecting them to a point close to the pivot point of the lever, the end of the lever will travel a much greater distance. In fact, since the connection is at a point 1/4 of the way along this lift arm, then the end of it will travel 4 times further than the piston does, or 8 studs. And the reason I did it this way instead of just building an enormous crankshaft was, again, to keep the height of the base low. Now, of course, since these 2 levers exist in the same plane, I had to offset their distance from the crankshaft so that they wouldn't interfere with each other. So now we need to connect the ends of those levers to the front of the skis. And to do that, we will add some lift arms. And the front of the skis slide back and forth on these tiles here, and they're constrained by some pieces on either side of them to make a channel. Now, if we take a look at the full model again, we can also see that the backs of the skis rise up as they move backwards. And that is because the ski is also pushing the leg backwards, connected at the foot. And of course, the leg is a fixed length and it rotates around the hip so that as the leg arcs up, it pulls the ski up as well. There is one little bit of extra motion in this model, which ended up being a complete accident. As the tip of the ski pole hits the top of the base as it's moving forward, the end of this bar still moves forward a little bit more before changing direction. As a result, it pulls the top of the ski pole forward, which pulls the arm forward and also the top of the torso. The result is that the figure looks like it's leaning forward just a little bit before it pushes back on the ski pole, which I think is a cool little bit of extra realism. Of course, depending on how fast you run the model, it can also just result in the figure shaking uncontrollably. I actually hope to expand on this model a little bit in the future. I think it'd be cool to add a rifle on the back, as if it were a biathlon competitor. And this figure is clearly designed like it's wearing some kind of Canadian uniform, but I think it would be cool to experiment with colors of other countries as well. I also think it would be cool to add more detail to the skis, as they often have branding on them. I actually tried these skis with some printed tiles on them, which I think look pretty good on their own, but since they're mostly white, they kind of just get visually lost in the base when you put them on the model. And that is about all there is to it. As always, I hope you enjoyed this model. Thanks for watching, keep on building, and I'll see you next time.